After recent nerfs to things like Antius Ward and One-Eyed Mask, I honestly think that Dunemarchers are the best exotic in the game for Titans. Now, you might be able to make some arguments for some different PvE activities, but even when you're slaying enemies of the darkness, these are great exotics. The AoE wave clear that these provide is stellar, and in PvP, these things pack a major punch. So let's talk about them. Linear actuators increase your sprint speed, which also increases your slide distance because of your forward momentum. It's funny because I'm about to do an exotic review on the transverse of steps and say the exact same thing, but increased sprint speed is extremely valuable. But this bad boy has something that is super powerful, if not broken right now, and that is the static charge. While you sprint around, you get the linear actuators to activate, and upon punching an enemy, throwing a shoulder charge out, or even literally throwing out a throwing hammer, you will then chain electricity to targets around you. They drastically increase the range of this in the Shadowkeep update, and I'm not sure why. They made these things so damn good that it's not even funny, and the range on it is absurd. Linear actuators will proc from pretty obscene distances. It will actually tag that knight there, which is awesome, but if I was to run up and punch the knight, it would also tag all of the enemies in this area and even back to the ogre. That is a lot of area of effect, because that means that the electricity will also go that way and that way in every direction around the target. And there's no real maximum or limit on how many enemies can be hit. So hypothetically, if there were 20 or 30 enemies in the area, they would all get decimated by this chaining electricity. And it hits pretty darn hard. Now, if we look at this drag here and we look at the damage, this does over half of its HP. That's a pretty good chunk of damage, and you can chain this thing over and over again. There's only a small delay in between, and so hypothetically, you could just run and melee everything over and over again. Now, you might have noticed there that it chained an extra time here. This is a debuff that will chain multiple times, and if other targets enter the area, it can chain to targets that have just spawned in certain circumstances. Now, one of the easiest ways to show this off is doing the old Altar of Sorrows. You can see this thing is chaining even after these enemies are dying, and between the beautiful linear actuators and Bottom Tree Striker, I can essentially wave clear these enemies and continually heal and never die. It's almost impossible to die, and single-handedly, I can just kind of keep punching stuff and keep destroying everything in my path. It doesn't require you to have your melee cooldown, it just requires you to sprint for a couple seconds, and you become this unbelievable wave-clearing machine. But what happens if you stack this with some other things, like, oh, I don't know, a throwing hammer? When you throw in the throwing hammer, you become a pretty much unkillable god. And as you get more kills with it, you gain more damage, allowing you to pretty much one-hit any medium tier or trash tier enemy. But also, when you pick this bad boy up, it's going to heal you. You get roaring flames making your grenades stronger, and you can kind of just focus big targets while the area of effect clears out everything else in your path. Now, the tankier the enemies get, the less valuable this feels, because you're going to start having to throw multiple hammers to kill them. It's going to limit your health regeneration. So if you're jumping into some Nightfalls or Master difficulty or something like that, it's not going to feel as great. But if you are doing this in any sort of Nightfall, Lost Sector, seasonal activity, it's going to feel great. But another big one is, because you're so capable of stacking Roaring Flame, it's going to make your super even stronger, and I think that this build is a lot of fun to play. And if that's not cool enough, it also augments many of your classes with shoulder charging type abilities to chain this electricity mid-super. meaning you can wave clear even better than you could before. And with something like the bottom tree striker, you're gonna glitch out the game. That captain doesn't even know what to do because there's so much AoE and damage, okay? He's glitching out because he's like, oh my god, save me from this Titan! The Dunemarchers are so good that they honestly trivialize most content in the game. You can single-handedly run through most enemies, and while, like that harpy, they might live with a sliver of health, if you just keep running, and chaining, and punching, and doing this over and over again, you can pretty well single-handedly clear most rooms without ever having to shoot your gun. Now, obviously, you need to be careful in things like Nightfalls, but any of the seasonal activity you'll do, you'll pretty much be able to kill everything with just punching. Now, there are some enemies that are just a little bit too tanky, like Cabal, but if you were running multiple people doing this, you could just clean up each other's kills, chain melees, and do insane area of effect. This is an almost entire playstyle you can get behind, and it's very fun to play. So if you look at the value of this exotic, it's insane. If you want to play the game and not shoot your guns, this is probably one of the best in the game, period. The AoE is super valuable, the speed is great for closing the gap, but I want to elaborate on that a little bit more in PvP. For me, the speed factor is always going to be valuable because it works in your super and when you're just running around slaying. That factor alone is almost enough for me to use these boots, but the electricity chaining can be great as well. Even in Rumble, where you're not going to have 6 players all grouped up together like Control, it can still be very valuable and get you kills that might not have happened. As I fly in to punch this guy, it ends up chaining through the wall, tagging the Warlock, and I'm able to get an easy cleanup with my shotgun. Without the Dunemarchers, that play might not have happened. And you're going to notice this happens a lot as people fly in to try and clean you up, they get tagged, and you're able to get a kill out of there that you wouldn't normally get. I think the biggest value for me is that extra speed, because as a shotgun player, it allows you to close the gap and kind of handcuff people. You go so fast that you can kind of just sprint towards them and catch them off guard with your speed. And there were so many times where I noticed a player was most likely staring at his radar, but didn't expect me to push towards them as fast as I did. That little bit of speed will throw them off. That little bit of speed will lead to you getting kills. And as I said before, it just makes your super even more deadly because you're going to be faster and be able to chase people down like, oh lord, he's coming! One thing I want to dock this thing for is consistency with the linear actuator. You need a target to be there, and so 1v1 you don't get any major value from that electricity. When it works, but if you're going to try to run around the map and nuke everyone with it, you're going to have a bad time. And because it doesn't one-bang everybody, if you're trying to sprint in and kill everyone with that electricity, you're most likely going to just die. The times that this works, it works amazing, and it's going to get you some crazy multi-kills, but just don't try to force it. Most of the time, kills will happen like this. This guy got meleeed, I got tagged, he ended up getting the kill. That player just meleeed another guy, I happened to be in the area, and I got tagged. Those situations happen a ton. It will allow you to clean up kills that you'd never expect, and you will get some crazy multi-kills. But just don't think that this is a nuke-all, one exotic-fits-all thing where you can just run around and get area of effect AoE easy kills. Now, is it going to proc sometimes and you're going to go, what the hell's going on? Yes, but don't just sprint into an auto rifle like I did. Another thing to mention is after you've procced linear actuators, it stays active for quite a long time. So even if you're not sprinting, you're going to be able to punch someone and get that ability to proc, which is super cool, super valuable, because if you're doing something like Trials of Osiris, where people are rushing in on you when you're the last guy, you can kind of just run away, plant in a corner, and when they push you, devastate them with area of effect damage. This is most likely going to be my main exotic on the Titan unless some new ones come out down the road or they make some changes, because pretty much every game I see the value happen, even if I'm sniping. The extra sprint speed is invaluable. Being able to get extra speed while I'm in my super, great, but the amount of times that this electricity has saved my ass in a tight situation, boys, I'm in love with it. Thank you so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and make sure to check out ViewSonic monitors if you're looking for some of the best, most elite monitors in gaming. Links are down below. The XG240R is a great entry-level monitor that I used for over a year, and I would recommend it to anyone looking to upgrade. That's it, see you later, bye-bye.